the question you have to figure out is how to get in the syllabus, right? What I did was I took a course that existed, 164, it hadn't been taught in years, and then repurposed it and shoved in social action into it. And it was called small group dynamics. So I just did a minor curriculum change, which was really easy. It took a month, and I had a course that I could use. If I would have gone through a normal process of starting a new course on my campus, that's a 3-year process. My perspective of a syllabus in light of this defining feature of the model, which is asking students to change a policy. It can be a rule, it can be a procedure, it can be a norm, but really most of them around policy changes. We've all created syllabuses before, or most of us have, and we've thought about classroom norms and so forth, but we haven't done so in the context of asking our students to actually change a policy and get involved early in that semester, in that process, so they can actually have that opportunity to do democracy and have a firsthand experience with power. The hardest thing for them to think about is, oh my gosh, I'm actually going to be involved in a campaign. And I would say, because I've taught this class 14 years now, half of the students know that it's going to be a campaign and the other half have no clue. They've walked in. They just thought they were going to study about maybe something about social change. They don't know that they're actually going to be doing something. So in my syllabus, I actually made a change. I started with this Huang statement, tell me and I forget, show me and I remember, involve me and I understand, which is kind of a basic language that service learning people use. And I actually added Frederick Douglass's comment to that, which is this: power concedes nothing without a demand. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. And why I put that in there right up front is that it shows my students that this is going to be not just about engagement, which it is, and you're going to be participants, not just sitting in a chair, and they're going to be engaged in the class in a different way. But also there's this idea of there's going to be a demand, and it's going to be about power, and they're going to be about coming up against people who have power, and they're going to make a demand. So I made that small but subtle change right from the beginning. I have this expression, you usually hear, on your mark, get set, go. We kind of flip that around and say, on your mark, go, get set. Get them into it, and then you're going to get to that part of getting set, but you're going first. For all of us, it's a bit of a challenge because this model asks you and the students to kind of jump in to these issues quite quickly and in a pretty dynamic way. By day 4, they've got their campaigns. And then you're backfilling to get the information. And some people are critical of that, saying, well, they need to know more. They have to do the research. But the students are usually pretty hungry because they realize they have to have that information if they're going to be successful. When students get into an issue and they have a very specific demand, and then start going out talking to allies, they start talking to other students about recruiting them, they realize quickly that they have to have more information, more research, and that thrusts them into it. And it's the driver for them to want to do that case study research that they normally would have done maybe in an analytical class. It kind of flips the model of learning around, where they become like a sponge. They want that information because it's necessary for them to be speaking about it. My experience is that students eventually will know way more than they would if they just had the case study without the action. I think it's super important that there's no political indoctrination. I think it's the only way that I'm allowed to do what I do on the campus is that I'm super clear in my language everywhere I go. And I differentiate myself, by the way, from other people who are progressive. I'm personally a progressive, but in this class, I'm not a progressive in the sense of students can choose whatever they want. My books aren't only from a progressive perspective. I have students read the NRA. I have students read about the Tea Party, about how they're bringing about change, and say they're using strategies and tactics, and this is about strategies and tactics and about power. And so we can learn from the left and the right. I don't do a history of those campaigns as much as what can we learn about tactics, strategy, building power, and media when we're looking at these campaigns. So I differentiate myself from some folks that are teaching progressive social change. Now, my students do a lot of progressive work, but that's up to them. And it's the only way I could survive. The university would have said, no, you have to stop doing that. But I'm clear in my language. No political indoctrination. I repeat it all the time. Students develop and choose what campaigns they work on. They can change with any campaign within the 4 or 5 they're going. So again, it's just all totally up to them. I say to my students that 60 to 7% of the campaigns generally are on the campus, because the question comes, I can't do this because it's too much work. But if you say to the students, it's going to be on the campus anyway, if you choose that you can have a campaign right here, it does a couple of things. It allows for them to easily do the work and have the campaign focus on something on the campus. And if the students are the community, it gets away from the criticism that sometimes we get, which is our students are going into the community and don't know very much about the community. So it gets away from that, since the students are the community in this instance. When the 30 to 40% of the students that are doing campaigns with a community-based organization that wants them, that sees a place for them in the work, and that they become a student wing of that campaign, they're working hand in hand with the community itself. They're not the leaders of that. The community is the leaders, but they're in support of that. And again, that gets away from the idea that kind of the worst kind of fear of our, young people that don't know much going out and organizing in the community where they don't have very much knowledge. I do say specifically, it's going to be an hour and a half to 2 hours a week of campaign work. I used to call it community work, but I think it's important to be clear around this, doing demands and issues. It's campaign work, not so much a political campaign, but a campaign around a demand. And I've added the language of 25 hours they have to do minimum, but 13 hours have to be doing something, at least half the time, whether that's flyering or tabling or a press event, or it could be a target meeting that's doing something, but it's not just meeting planning. The readings is an important point of any syllabus. You'll have to decide which book to use. Obviously, I've written this book. You feel free to use that book, but there's other books out there in community organizing, right? The only thing that those books that don't have that mine does is mine is situated for a semester. For years and years, I was using 3 or 4 different books, just pulling from them and putting the syllabus together how I thought it should flow. I used the book on Organize, which is the Midwest Academy book. It's a great book. I used it for years, but it starts the campaign choosing in the middle of the book. So I had to actually use that, bring it up front. So you have to make those kind of changes. I included in the book student reflections, where the students reflect on the campaigns and other students read those. I would recommend, as you do this, and with other professors start doing this, you ask the students to respond to these questions around the campaign. What did they learn from the campaign? What was the most successful part of their campaign? What would they have done differently? And then I have the students read those, and it becomes part of the curriculum. Again, decentering faculty, which I always think is good to do. We're co-creators, but students are creators of knowledge too. You need to have some way to mix and integrate the action and the reflection. And I do that through the portfolio. This is an opportunity for them to take their action, take their reading, and integrate them. So everything else is the same, right? We all do participation and so forth, but that's a defining feature of this mixing. I happen to call it portfolio. You can call it whatever you want, but you're gonna have to figure out how to mix action and reflection. The campaign notebook is distinct in that they actually produce something that's going to be used, because how many times the students take a final and that's it as they go into the next semester. In our class, they actually produce a campaign notebook, which then serves as the next semester's model for they pick up and like, what were the lessons learned in that campaign? And do they want to reactivate or continue it? In that campaign notebook, it's really alive. And they do a final group presentation. We all do group presentations, but it's on what they learned in their campaign. So it's a bit different. I'll just say a couple other things about teaching style. I would say it's social action. It's more than just teacher talk. I do give short lectures, but the small group is key. And the key part is this: you're helping as the teacher solve problems in real time. That's the difference. Real-time problems are coming up and you're helping to solve them. And then you're applying the concepts to the action, which is important. But I would say the thing that distinguishes this model is that there are real problems that are happening and you're, rather than the sage on the stage, but the guide on the side, helping them solve those problems. And that it's based in this Freirean notion of education, of a bottom-up education. You're trying to create everything you do to say, participate and take action. This is what it's going to be about. So everything's for me around participation, taking action. And I hold them accountable. when we get together as a class, both in small and large group, I'll have them report out about what they've done over the last couple of days to move their campaign forward. And that puts them on the spot. They have to say, well, I didn't do anything, or I did X, Y, and Z. And it helps keep people accountable to take action for their campaign. I would say the other thing is that most of my students think it's going to be an easy class. Easy because they think, wow, it's not teacher talk, so it's going to be easy. And they do horrible on the first quiz because no one's done the reading because they think it's easy. But I would say that it's actually more demanding because they're actually going to take ideas and apply them to what they're learning. I just want to say one thing. If you can have a small class size, have it. 16 to 20, it's a total different experience when it's 35 to 40. And I've done both. We have a cap of about 35 to 40 on our classes, so they can't be more than that. But it's such a challenge as a professor with all the students in need to get to the 5 or 6 groups that are going at one time when I'm the only professor in the classroom compared to when there's 20 students. So if you can have a small class, have 20, it's much nicer. I do want to say one thing about the recruitment of students, that I do have to spend some time because my class doesn't count for anything other than as an upper division class. So I have to recruit. I have this flyer up around campus. I put it in our building, which has like 4,000 students. It talks about the wins they've had, what the class is, learn and do change. It kind of gets at the heart. Here's one of our students after the minimum wage campaign victory. I have to recruit my own students because it's not required for anything. I use that as a way to do it, and it's usually pretty effective. I want to say something about building campus allies and community partner allies. It's important, one, just to build allies around you, that the institutes and the departments and the centers know that it's available, because I use them to recruit students. I also use them as mentors for the campaigns, because when there's sometimes 5 and 6 campaigns going on, I tend to be the mentor as the faculty member. But if I can get another faculty member who's engaged in that issue that they're working on, it's helpful to have a mentor that they can also talk to. It also informs other scholars and staff that they can teach this as well. I do also build alliances on the campus with administration. I meet with the dean, so there's no surprises. My students usually are working on something to change something on the campus, and I just let them know that this is what they're working on. And they appreciate it, and it helps in that process of dialogue with the students, that they know that the students are going to be working on, whether it's on student homelessness or on mental health issues. I'm trying to be transparent with them. As regards to building allies with the community, super important, because you get to know your stakeholders, the nonprofit folks, the faith, the unions, the politicians. The more that you get to know them too is good, because one, you can invite them in on the second day to come in and talk to them about campaigns they might have going on. And the second, because the students will ask you, who can be allies? And you're like, well, the head of the NAACP, it's Jeff Moore. Let me give you his number. If you're connected to them, it's helpful.